Well, by Joe Biden standards, if we use the Joe Biden curve, the president, I'll give him an A on the speech yesterday. Now, he was an hour and change late. By any normal standards, I'd probably give him a C. But it was not a soft speech yesterday from the president. Now, it took him way too long to give this speech. The speech should have been given on Sunday night after the attacks in Israel on Saturday. But I guess better late than never. But you know what? When you're grading on the Biden curve, it actually was acceptable. He did not mince his words when talking about Hamas. He did not mince his words talking about what happened to the Israeli people this past weekend. So by those standards, it was good. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning on KCMO. By the way, tomorrow at this very time, if you're one of the early birds, you will know the big changes that are coming for this radio station. So be sure you are tuned in then. Here was Joe Biden yesterday. We aired the speech here on KCMO. It was supposed to be in the 12 o'clock hour. And Mark, when did he ultimately take the stage since you were running the show here yesterday?
I believe it was 1:27.
1:20. He was supposed to be on at noon. What the hell was going on? Got to wait for the Adderall to kick in? Diaper change or two? What do we do? An hour and a half late? Jeez, John.
Bonanza's on Me TV, I think. At that time, so he may have been watching.
Oh,
Austin,
gosh.
guys.
Maybe that's what happened. Either way, here he was yesterday, President of the United States.
I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet.
That was Joe Biden, part of his speech yesterday. Now, there's no doubt when it comes to delivering the said words, he still struggles. And he certainly doesn't come off between his policies and his delivery as somebody that the worst human beings on the planet fear. And we've seen that play out, by the way, the last couple of years. Whether it's Putin, Hamas, we've seen that play out. The worst actors in the world do not fear this White House. That's indisputable. He's like the substitute teacher. They show up and the kids run wild. That's what you're seeing right now. Now, if there's a criticism of the speech, it's not only the delivery, but it is the fact that Biden did not call out Iran. That would have been preferable for calling out Iran for its longtime support of Hamas. He chose not to do that. But he did not hold back when talking about support for Israel, when talking about the atrocities that took place over the weekend there. He did not try to sugarcoat any of that. So I give him credit. I didn't know if that was going to happen, but I give him credit for that. But by the standards of a president who just made one 3-minute on-camera statement in the first 72 hours, who turns 81 next month, who tends to ramble, I'll also say this. Joe Biden was better off not taking questions yesterday. I know that's been a big talking point. Look at this old man shuffle off the stage.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, was there an intelligence failure in the lead up to this attack? Mr. President, can you tell us what PV asked you specifically for support?
And if you see the video, he literally shuffles off the stage. I mean, it's really embarrassing. That being said, I didn't want him answering any questions yesterday. He's incapable of doing the job. He cannot answer questions, and this administration cannot allow him to answer questions off the cuff and have any confidence that he is not going to stick his foot in his mouth. In fact, it's almost guaranteed that he will. They can't allow him in a moment like this to veer off message. In one of the tensest foreign policy moments in modern American history, you can't have an 81-year-old guy up there not knowing what he's about to say. So as much as it's easy to say, look at him shuffle off the stage, honestly, in the interest of everybody's safety, most notably our allies, and not sending mixed messages, stick to the script, Pops, and get off that stage. I can't criticize him for that. Now, it says something, of course, in terms of where we're at as a country when this is the leader of the free world. That's a completely different topic, and you know how I well feel about that. But just in terms of this and that moment yesterday, he had no business answering any questions, stick to the script, and move on. Now, when you look forward at what's going on for the next several months, I mean, it's not going to be pretty, right? I mean, we know that the foreign policy under this guy has been an unmitigated disaster. Hamas has American terrorists. We don't know yet what exactly is going to be done to them or with them, but we got to imagine it's not going to be pretty. We know there are over a dozen Americans who, of course, have died over the last several days that we know of in these attacks. But you think about next year, the Biden administration is going to go in front of the American people and try to sell you on 4 more years of this. And foreign policy and national security usually is not a determining factor in elections, typically. Now, it has helped presidents in the past, i.e. George W. Bush, but it's typically not something that tips the scales in any election. But what are we going to see next year? The Biden administration is going to go before the American people and argue that this tidal wave of evil over the last couple of years around the world has nothing to do with them, their decisions, or their policies. They will claim it's just bad luck. That the world's most evil men have no fear of America, just happens to be on their watch. Of course, that's nonsense. That's utter BS. But that's going to be the pitch. And by November of 2024, we will have had another several dozen news cycles. God willing, we don't forget about what's happening right now and what took place over the weekend. But man, the news cycle, it just moves so fast, for better or for worse. I just hope we don't forget, and we should never forget, what's taken place here over the weekend.
To the response to that proposed pitch that you made should be, and so you guys knew nothing about this.
Yeah, no intelligence failures,
right.
nothing.
What are we doing here with the military?
What do you? Yeah, exactly right. And what are you doing?
Oh, we're changing pronouns.
Yes. I wonder if we're even ready for a fight, to be honest, when you look at what they're doing with our military. Not that I want us in one. I don't. You know, Israel is a very capable nation and an incredibly efficient and capable military, but that's a good point as well. But is anyone ever going to bring up the fact that, you know, our domestic oil policy has also emboldened some of the worst actors in the world? So back in 2020, Iran's crude oil export revenue was $7.9 billion. In 2022, $42.6 billion. That's essentially sixfold on Iran's crude oil export revenue from 2020, which I know, you want to say it's a COVID year, fine, but it's also under a previous administration, $7.9 billion. This past year, $42.6 billion. Last year was a record year for Iran's oil industry, but not American energy. Tell me again how the green energy nonsense is all about saving the planet, because as far as I can tell, planet ain't being saved right now. It's getting worse. 913-408-7710. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning on KCMO. Of course, tomorrow, one of the biggest announcements in KCMO history that will change the future of this radio station. Do not miss that. something that could change the future. How about this? Aaron Rodgers wants to debate our own Mr. Pfizer, Travis Kelce. We will get into that and who said what coming up next. Aaron, Maury. Good morning. Welcome in. Aaron Rodgers wants to debate Travis Kelce. And I suggest it happens right here on KCMO Talk Radio. We are already, of course, in the home of Travis Kelce. Aaron Rodgers wants this debate. He can fly in to Kansas City. We've got these brand new, beautiful, multi-million-dollar studios here at Corporate Woods on KCMO that we've had for the last 3.5 years. They are still pristine. And we've got plenty of room for the entourage in here, too. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 6 microphones in this studio. That's plenty, right? Get the boys in here and let's roll, baby.
Somebody can borrow my mic if they want. I'm sure John will give up his.
Yeah, we got 8. Woo! Let's make it happen. So, what was that? A week ago or so, Aaron Rodgers called Travis Kelce Mr. Pfizer. And then Travis Kelce ended up responding to being called Mr. Pfizer late last week by Aaron Rodgers. So before we get to Aaron Rodgers challenging Travis Kelce to a debate, let's remind you on what Travis Kelce said when asked about Aaron Rodgers calling him Mr. Pfizer.
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, with the stash right now, I look like a guy named Mr. Pfizer. Who knew I'd get into the vax wars with Aaron Rodgers, man? It's Mr. Pfizer versus the Johnson & Johnson family over there, man.
I don't think we asked you about, since you're in the commercial, can you kind of just say why you wanted to do that?
I mean, I've always been, once I got the vaccine, and I got it because of, keeping myself safe, keeping my family safe, the people in this building. So, yeah, I stand by it 1,000% and fully comfortable with him calling me Mr. Pfizer.
Now, of course, what Travis Kelce said there is not accurate. I mean, it doesn't mean he shouldn't have gotten it. It's up to him. I've told you guys before, I got the first one. No boosters in my future, but did get the first one. And in hindsight, we now know that it doesn't prevent you from spreading COVID. It doesn't protect anybody around you. It may protect you, right? It may lessen your symptoms, but it doesn't stop you from getting COVID, and it does not stop you from spreading COVID. That much we know. That is indisputable. That is science. So what Travis Kelce said there is just inaccurate. But, of course, Kansas City media that's too busy chuckling along with him is not going to point that out. So Aaron Rodgers yesterday, Pat McAfee show on ESPN, was asked about this, asked about Travis Kelce's response, and here's what he had to say to Pat McAfee.
I mean, listen, Mr. Pfizer said he didn't think he would be in a vax war with me.
Oh, boy.
Didn't think he'd be in a vax war with me. This ain't a war, homie. This is just conversation. But if you want to have some sort of duel, debate, have me on the podcast. Come on the show. Let's have a conversation.
Okay.
Pass it out.
Let's do it like in John Wick 4, right? So we both have a second.
Nice.
Right? So somebody to help us out. I'm going to take my man, RFK Jr.
Okay. Okay.
As an independent.
Hell yeah.
Right? And he can have, Tony Fauci or some other pharmacrat, and we can have a conversation about this.
Okay. Well, I'm happy we got that sorted.
So that's Aaron Rodgers challenging Travis Kelce to a vax debate where he gets RFK Jr., and, God bless RFK Jr., but I can't listen to the guy talk for more than 10 seconds with his voice thing. I just can't do it. And he said that Travis could have Tony Fauci. Hey, Tony Fauci! Oh, my goodness.
Pharmacrat.
The pharmacrat. I got one better for him. Just to save on travel costs, don't bother bringing Tony Fauci here. We got our own one of those right here in town. You know who I'm talking about.
Thanksgiving.
Oh!
Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
Give him the old slob, former KCMO health director Rex Archer. All right, give him that old boy. Rex is retired, thank goodness. So get old Rex Archer on the horn. He's got nothing to do. He's right here in town. And make it a couple of Kansas City boys, Rex Archer and Travis Kelce. There's your 1-2 punch, your tag team. And then you got Aaron Rodgers and RFK Jr. I might prefer Joe Rogan, over RFK, but I'm just saying, okay, let's see that tag team. Let's see what happens there. Oh, I just love how it's going down.
I think you're doing Travis a disservice there.
Really?
Putting him there with Archer.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to do that, in fairness. Yes, You're right. There's no way to win. He's either got Fauci or he's got Archer.
Yeah.
I mean, you're picking from the bottom of the barrel here. Let's be honest.
They're on the bottom line, so economics.
Yeah, exactly
less
right.
on the travel.
I will put my money on Aaron Rodgers in that one, time after time. I don't think Travis Kelce really knows what he's talking about. He just got presented by his handlers a big old check to, roll his sleeve up and say, 2 for 1, woo! And he's like, sure, I'll take the money. But clearly not at the speed like Aaron Rodgers is on this stuff. So don't do it on the McAfee podcast. Don't do it on Kelsey's podcast. Do it right here on KCMO. We are the neutral site location where you have to make this happen. So we're going to reach out to Rodgers and see if we can get that deal done. Speaking of the Chiefs, they put out a statement on what took place in Israel over the weekend. And this came down yesterday at 5 o'clock. It reads, the Chiefs denounced the recent senseless acts of terrorism and mourn the loss of innocent lives in Israel. We pray for the families impacted by the horrific and unconscionable violence. And, it's a fine statement. It's a decent statement. But it's pretty amazing some of the blowback that they received on their social media pages. Some people are saying, here's one commenter, they are both equally as bad. Stay out of this. Somebody else writes, I remember when sports didn't involve politics. Can I address that coming up? If you denounce terrorism, this is not getting involved in bathroom laws. These are two very different things, and we'll get into that and the cancel culture of the moment next. It is not politics for the Chiefs to put out a tweet denouncing terrorism. That is not politics. That is not Major League Baseball moving its All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver because of so-called voter oppression. That is not the NBA doing something similar regarding bathroom bills in North Carolina. That's sports and politics. Sending out a tweet standing with innocent Jews who were just slaughtered in their worst day since the Holocaust is not diving into politics, you anti-Semitic Kansas Cityan clowns. I don't know who needs to hear that message, but apparently too many of you do, because when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs and what was a fairly simple statement they put out last night on social media, it is amazing some of the responses that you see here. One person writes, stick to football. Oh, okay. Gosh. Yeah, innocent lives are lost. Babies are beheaded. Stick to football. Oh, that's something. Huh. I am just stunned. I'm stunned about the blatant anti-Semitism that we are seeing. And by the way, it's from one side of the political aisle. And I'll have more on that next hour, but I just continue to be absolutely shocked by it. Now, you're seeing this as well, not just in comments to the Kansas City Chiefs, who put out a fairly basic and beyond reasonable statement yesterday. You're also seeing it in higher education. President of New York University Student Bar Association has lost a cushy law job after sending a pro-Hamas message on Tuesday cheering the terror attacks on civilians and blaming Israel for the bloodshed. Raina Workman is her name, and she also accused the Jewish state of genocide, which caused so much outrage that a law firm planning to employ her rescinded its offer just hours later over the inflammatory comments. Workman, who identifies as non-binary,
Talk about a bombshell.
put out a statement saying, I want to express first and foremost my unwavering and absolute solidarity with Palestinians in their resistance against oppression toward liberation and self-determination. Workman added, Israel bears full responsibility for this tremendous loss of life. This regime of state-sanctioned violence created the conditions that made resistance necessary. So once again, this individual lost her job that she had lined up coming out of NYU, and good. And when I say good, some of you may accuse me of, promoting and supporting cancel culture. I think we need to reset the conversation on cancel culture for a second here, if we could. Being against cancel culture does not mean that you should never lose a job when you make heinous comments. What cancel culture, for those of us who push back against it, is about is not ruining somebody's life over something you perceive to be offensive that really isn't. That's a fairly common opinion held by half of America. Right? That's what cancel culture really is. If you're canceled because of how you vote, or what candidate you may support in a presidential election, or if somebody finds out that you are a Donald Trump supporter, you could have your livelihood upended. That's cancel culture. It doesn't mean that when you outwardly support terrorists who just slaughtered 1,000 people, it doesn't mean that I'm going to support having no repercussions on you, right? When you outwardly post on social media your support for those things, I am not going to jump on board and defend you. That's not cancel culture. Let's be clear here, John. This isn't too difficult, but I felt the need to reset that conversation.
I think it's important to separate the two because I think the notion now in verbiage and semantics is to try to blur everything, you know? Just a simple thing like, I'm exhausted. It's like, no, dude, you're just tired.
Yeah.
You're not exhausted by definition.
Yeah.
Right? And this whole thing of blurring it all, like, well, we might as well just take everybody's rights since we can't sort this out. No, we can sort this out. There is a distinction.
Yes, there is very much a distinction. And supporting terrorists who just killed 1,000 Jews, including over a dozen Americans, is not, well, I'm going to support this person's right to say it. Now, you can say whatever you want, but saying that, as despicable and disgusting as it is, does not mean that you are guaranteed a hotshot law firm job just because you're non-binary or whatever. Like, that's not how this works. So, no, I'm not going to defend that person from cancel culture because that's not cancel culture. That just makes you a terrible person. What cancel culture has often been about is about half the country saying, if you are part of the other half, you should not be employed, you should not have a living, you should, be banned from modern American culture and society. That's cancel culture. It is not cancel culture when a business makes the decision to not hire you because, well, you've shown to be sympathetic towards terrorists. Are we on the same page? Are we cool on that? 913-408-7710 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio. That's also the text line. 24 hours from now, we will have a very big announcement on this radio station that you are not going to want to miss. 913-408-7710 to get on board here on KCMO Talk Radio. Do we want to go to some phones? Yeah, what do you think? Should we hit a couple of phone calls? Yeah, let's do it here on KCMO Talk Radio. Mike is on in Kansas City. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, you remember a few years ago when Trump said there were two sides to taking the statues of historical people down?
Oh, yeah, that's
you remember
right.
how they equated Trump with all those people? I don't recall the people who wanted to keep the statues up decapitating babies.
Yeah.
You can be supportive of somebody's cause, but you cannot excuse the brutality against civilians, the deliberate brutality. And I'm not making light of people dying in warfare, but dropping a bomb from 50,000 feet and hitting a building or taking a baby and decapitating it in front of their mother, there's two different situations there. And, granted, the person dies in each case, but, there's a deliberate intent on the person who decapitates the baby to humiliate and dehumanize them, where a person dropping the bomb is just finding a target to drop the bomb on.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, you can't make a moral equivalency of that.
That's right.
And, this is what bothers me about the whole thing. Being in academic circles and being in those circles, this anti-Semitism does not surprise me because you see it all the time. Nobody admits it, and the sad thing about it, there are some cultural Jews that actually support it. Not religious Jews, but people who are cultural, like Shapiro says, and they actually support this stuff, which is so sad. I wonder if this was what was going on in Germany in the 20s.
Yeah, I know, Mike. You're right. I mean, listen, people asked yesterday, somebody called in yesterday and asked this, and I didn't want to answer for any Jews, but, they asked me on my show, so I gave my opinion. They said, Pete, the Democratic Party continues to be soft in its support of Israel. Why do many Jews end up voting Democrat? And my response is pretty simple, because many of them are Jewish, but they are secular Jews. So they view the Democratic Party through the lens of the issues they like, and they kind of say, yeah, I wish they were maybe stronger in Israel, but I care about these other issues more. It's really that simple. So that's something that, Shapiro has noted and is out there. Now, when you mention academia, I don't know if you saw this, but UMKC is having a pro-Palestinian event right here in town. We'll get you the details on that. This is truly unbelievable. UMKC is just, all right, go ahead. Yeah, have a great time. We'll get you the details on this pro-Palestinian event, Justice in Palestine event. And the details behind it coming up next on KCMO. Got to get our buddy Bill O'Reilly back on the show, especially with a huge announcement coming to this radio station tomorrow morning. You are not going to want to miss that. One of the biggest announcements that KCMO Talk Radio has ever had. And many of you are guessing on the text line, and I promise that you are in the wrong direction, John.
I've already thought of a Bill O'Reilly FM song that we could play.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. There you go.
70s song, maybe.
Okay. That would be good. I like the sound of that. Meantime, we just got done with Stacey Graves, police chief in Kansas City, Missouri, part of town that they are rapidly reducing crime. And I thought about Carl Oakman, KCK police chief, who told us a great story a couple of weeks ago about how one of the reasons he became a cop is because when he was a kid, there was a great detective in his neighborhood who became buddy-buddy with a lot of the young men who oftentimes were black in his neighborhood. And there was great trust there. There was partnerships and friendships there, and that's what you need. And that doesn't happen overnight, but you want that to take place in urban communities, especially across the country, including here in Kansas City. But it's tough because social media and mainstream media are telling you that cops are bad guys, and they're not. So the cops have a much tougher job from that standpoint because they are getting inundated with propaganda and lies every single day from their newspapers and their social medias and their TikToks and things like that. So it's not good, but, they're fighting the good fight there at KCPD. Now, who's not fighting the good fight? Black Lives Matter. No shocker here, I know.
Talk about a bombshell.
But I am shocked. Maybe, gosh, I don't want to use that word anymore because I'm really never shocked. But you have Black Lives Matter chapters around the country over the last 48 hours who are not only just staying silent maybe and not showing any support for Israel after their worst day since the Holocaust. You have Black Lives Matter chapters promoting how they support the Palestinians and calling what took place over the weekend self-defense. Black Lives Matter Chicago has a new cover photo on their Facebook page that says, "I stand with Palestine." And it's a cutout of somebody, a person, theoretically a Palestinian, flying into Israel on one of those, like, you know, what do you call those things?
Paraglider.
Yeah, paraglider, which is what was happening over the weekend as they were slaughtering innocent Israelis. That's what the Black Lives Matter new cover photo is on Facebook out of Chicago. And then BLM Los Angeles, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, put up this post last night. And my wife actually flagged this for me. I mean, you know, we've all been incredibly disturbed, and normally she's pretty in tune with the news cycle, but she's been, you know, showing me stuff that I'm not seeing. Usually it's the other way around. Like, hey, I'm the news guy here. She's been flagging stuff for me. And she sent me this Black Lives Matter statement in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And part of their statement reads as follows. When a people have been subject to decades of unimaginable violence, their resistance must not be condemned, but understood as a desperate act of self-defense. Black Lives Matter grassroots stands in solidarity with our Palestinian family who are currently resisting 57 years of settler colonialism. As black people continue to fight to end militarism and mass incarceration in our own communities, let us understand the resistance in Palestine as an attempt to tear down the gates of the world's largest open-air prison. They just called what Hamas did to the Jews, slaughtering 1,000 people. Black Lives Matter, grassroots, has called that a desperate act of self-defense. These people are animals. I don't know what other word to use. That is as disgusting, evil, disgraceful a thing that you can say. That what the Hamas terrorists just did is a desperate act of self-defense. And it got me thinking, why is there such solidarity between Black Lives Matter, organizationally on the ground, and the terrorists from Palestine? What is going on? It's one thing to disagree on how many cops we should have on the streets and whether or not each cop should be walking around a community, you know, with some expert on mental health. It's another thing to show outward support for terrorists, which is what you are seeing. And they're not hiding their support for terrorists. 913-408-7710. We'll continue this conversation with you next. You know, maybe next time, if you see a Black Lives Matter sign or poster or whatever, you know, in your neighborhood or a flag in your kid's school or something like that, maybe we should make sure that we ask those supporters what they think about these statements from some of the BLM grassroots folks. BLM Los Angeles putting up this statement on its Instagram page yesterday. Writing here, when a people have been subject to decades of unimaginable violence, their resistance must not be condemned, but understood as a desperate act of self-defense. BLM grassroots in Los Angeles. BLM Chicago putting up a tweet saying it stands with Palestine. This is happening in BLM organizations all over the nation over the last 24 hours. Yet corporate America got completely duped by this group back in 2020. Corporate America sold its soul to this group back in 2020 as somehow a good organization trying to do good things in communities and cities around the country. They were nothing but a bunch of far-left, evil, hate-mongerers who were shaking down corporate America and shaking down, wokesters from coast to coast for money. That's it. And they raised millions of dollars, and have they done anything for a single person in any of the communities they insist they're protecting? Not as far as I can tell. I haven't seen one example. Have you? I have seen the leaders getting in trouble with the law for, buying multiple homes with their money in places like California. You got the state of California looking into some of their leaders. California is doing that, not Texas, California. But these organizations, these grassroots Black Lives Matter organizations who are standing in solidarity, their words, with Palestine, has been one of the most disgraceful responses to this absolute tragedy over the weekend in Israel that I've ever seen, to terrorism. They are standing alongside and supporting terrorists right here in America. And how many of your neighbors over the last 3 years have put those dopey signs and flags in their front lawns? Ask them about that next time you see one. Right? I would. Hey, do you know how they feel about what's taking place here in Israel over the last few days? Oh, you haven't seen this? Let me share it with you here on KCMO. And you can, point them to the Instagram pages, point them to the Facebook pages and the Twitter pages, where they're outwardly supporting Hamas. And I didn't think that BLM as an organization would necessarily be pro-Israel. I never anticipated or expected that. But I certainly didn't think that they would be outwardly supporting terrorist groups, which is exactly what they're doing. Can we also, what about the people in Congress who are kneeling and showing their solidarity with BLM the last few years? I'd love to get their response to what this organization has put out on social media over the last 48 hours, right? You can find any of them. There's plenty of folks over the last 3 years who were kneeling in the summer of 2020 in solidarity with that organization, including people here in Kansas City. It's time to condemn this group that has done nothing for 3 years for the people they insist to help. They have simply sowed discord and chaos and promoted lies and propaganda in media. And by the way, media's carried their water as well. How many, and there's only a couple of them in this town, but how many BLM activists have been, portrayed on local news as some kind of hero or expert on anything? You know who they are. You know who these hacks are. I don't need to name them on the air. Meantime, I had one news organization here in town. I don't want to say which one, but I was trying to get one of their reporters on the show today for something on the Royals, and the newsroom turned me down. The reporter was apologetic, but the news directors turned me down. No, we don't want to go on that show. Really? Yeah, but you'll gladly put on BLM activists on your 10 o'clock news after this organization this week has stood in solidarity, their words, with Palestine and the attacks that took place, calling it self-defense. Literally calling the murder of babies self-defense. I hate that this is the kind of conversation we are having to have this week. Trust me, I want to be sitting here, yes, talking about the news, but also, keeping it light as we can with the topics that we discuss here on KCMO. But there's no way to do it this week with this story. And here's Jake Tapper on CNN. As we tie this all together, Black Lives Matter, far-left politicians, far-left activists, and the anti-Semitism that is running rampant. This is Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday.
These last few days have been a real eye-opening period for a lot of people, a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives, in terms of anti-Semitism on the left. A lot of people who seem more shocked at dehumanizing language used by world leaders to describe Hamas than what Hamas actually perpetrated on Saturday.
Good for Jake. I mean, Jake Tapper, I've said it before. I mean, once in a while, Jake Tapper does just call it like it is, and he gets it right. Jake Tapper is one of those guys that you want to like because when he does a good job, he does a good job. But then half the time you end up just banging your head against the wall. But he got this one right. The underlying story this week that is not getting enough attention from a media perspective is the anti-Semitism that is running rampant in progressive circles in this country. And it's not even like, simmering. It's not simmering. It is full-blown out there, promoted on social media, being bragged about. And then you have Rashida Tlaib, one of the members of Congress who's part of the squad out of Michigan. She was confronted yesterday by a reporter. She has been very much in the pro-Palestinian camp. She is very much a pro-Black Lives Matter supporter. She's somebody who flies the Palestinian flag outside of her office in Congress. And she could not answer a very simple question. She wouldn't even look this reporter in the eyes when she was confronted on Capitol Hill yesterday. Take a listen.
Terrorists have cut off babies' heads and burned children alive. Do you support Israel's rights to defend themselves against this brutality?
We're just going to go through there.
You can't comment about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads? Congresswoman, do you have a comment on Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads? You have nothing to say about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads? Do you condone what Hamas has done, chopping off babies' heads, burning children alive, raping women in the street? You have no comment about children's heads being chopped off?
I can't keep, I don't want to keep playing that on the air, but you get the point. Right? You understand. That's Rashida Tlaib, a United States Congresswoman. This woman makes decisions for 330 million Americans. She has a vote on the most important issues happening in this country. And she gets asked that question a dozen times by a reporter at Capitol Hill yesterday, and she can't answer it. She just keeps on walking. She storms away. She walks into an elevator. She cannot even look that reporter in the eye and say, of course, what happened is disgraceful, is terrorism, and is awful. She can't do that. That person, it's not like that's some radical activist on a street corner in Detroit. Person's in the United States Congress. At what point, and I sit here at 7:44 on a Wednesday, and I wonder at what point do we have the conversation about how we appear to have people in the United States Congress who are outwardly supporting the worst terrorists on planet Earth. And if you can't condemn them, you're supporting them. As far as I'm concerned, if you're silent on it, you're supporting them. This is not a hard thing to condemn. This is not difficult. This is not left-right political. Unless maybe it is. I don't know what other conclusion to come to. 913-408-7710, 745. On a Wednesday morning on KCMO. Coming up here in Kansas City on this front, Quinton Lucas did the right thing yesterday. He revoked the appointment of somebody to the zoning commission who was also spouting anti-Semitism. We'll get you the details on that, who this person is, and how this decision by the mayor came to be, coming up next on KCMO. I mean, they're difficult conversations. They're in no way the conversations we want to be having right now, but it is, of course, not just the biggest news story of the week, of the year. It is the worst terrorist attack on the Jewish people, worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and some of the worst terrorism we've seen, if not the worst terrorism we've seen since September 11th. And here we are talking about it, and you are seeing now progressive circles, BLM, members of Congress, not only not condemn what's happened, but in some cases support it. 913-408-7710. We will tell you what happened here in Kansas City on this front as well coming up. Neil's in Olathe. He's been waiting. What's up, Neil?
Good morning. How are you?
All right, Neil, what's happening?
Well, I guess one thing I want to throw out there is everything that happened in Israel is horrible with the brutality of it and what's happened to those people, those innocent people. And it seems like with the American media, locally in Kansas City, but nationally as well, that everyone's more concerned about like what people have said since then or what people are doing because of this happening, as opposed to the actual crime of people being, murdered. And it's just media drama. And it's somewhat unsettling that the impact or we're not talking about the real issue here. We're talking about what Lindsey Graham said or what this Congress lady did with the flag outside of her office. We're dodging the issue. We're dramatizing a horrible event for personal gain in some, the gain of the media, the gain of the radio stations, the gain of the TV stations, just to get viewers and listeners.
Well, I don't think me talking about a congressperson supporting terrorism is somehow me doing that for clicks or listens or anything of that nature. So
then my question would be, and I stand with Israel. I think that what happened is horrible. I think that they should be able to do whatever they need to do to defend themselves and go on the offensive, and the United States should support them in any way possible, even if that means moving those warships closer, sending troops over there, sending money over there, weapons, whatever. Those terrorists need to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I don't understand, because I'm slightly uninformed, I'll just be honest right there, is the congresswoman had a Palestinian flag outside of her office. Mm-hmm. And the Hamas resides in Palestine. So why does she have a Palestinian flag? Does she have a flag for Palestine because she supports Hamas or because she supports Palestine?
Well, to me, especially based on the last week, Neil, and thanks for checking in, there's no distinguishing between the two. I mean, they run the country, they run the government. Now, are there people in Palestine who may be against Hamas? Sure, but Hamas runs the country. And that has been noted for a very long time. They have been emboldened by Iran, of course, over the last several years, but for even longer than that. So the notion that she is going to be somebody who is just there innocently supporting the people of Palestine, that doesn't work. And by the way, if that was her excuse for flying the Palestinian flag outside of her office, I'm guessing she would say as much. She is not. Wes is in Gladstone. Hey, Wes, you're on KCMO. What's up?
Yeah, Pete, I had wanted to call you about this subject. Thanks for bringing it up, but I regularly post on this sports chat board list, but you can also talk politics. And there's the usual suspects on it. We go back and forth. But since Saturday, I have noticed the vitriol against Israel is just mind-blowing. I mean, you got people on there that are claiming that everybody in the cabinet is a Jew and they're Zionists, and the Jews are running the world. All that crap you heard that the Nazis said, And all these new posters are on there too, because everybody's got a handle. I'm seeing these new handles, and you go back at these people. Well, how do you justify this? And all they do is tell you how evil Israel is. It's really shocking, man.
Yeah,
it's just mind blowing that these people are that far out there. And as far as Talib goes, if you're flying the Palestinian flag, you're supporting Hamas, period.
Yep. Well said,
period.
There, Wes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And listen, we have you're right. It's sick. It's scary how much anti-Semitism is out there. And by the way, they have been emboldened the last 4 days. They're not going into hiding, right? They have been emboldened on social media the last 4 days. And I will say that there is a fraction, yes, of both ends of the political spectrum that are anti-Semites. And for, the whole, Jews run the world, all that insanity and craziness and stuff that's out there. But when it comes to permeating mainstream politics and members of Congress, that is on one side of the political aisle. I don't deny that there are far-right Nazi anti-Semites that exist. They do, and they're just as despicable as anybody else. But when it comes to permeating mainstream political circles, when an organization like Black Lives Matter that has been propped up by politicians and by corporate America over the last 3 years is now outwardly supporting Palestine, that's next level. When you have politicians flying the Palestinian flag outside of their office, elected members of the United States Congress, that's next level. That would be like some far-right kook, having some Klan nonsense outside of his office. That would be wall-to-wall news, as it should be. You got it on the other side of the political aisle, and yes, it's getting more attention, but still not nearly enough. A lot of you are chiming in, so I will, right after the top of the hour, I'm going to get to this story in Kansas City. What happened there? Plus, would you ever send your kid to Harvard? I'll get into that next.